every day we meet people, or we come in contact with people. How do we relate to them? How do you relate to them? Welcome this morning to our service, The Art of Relating.
There's a friction, too much friction. There's a friction, too much friction. There's a friction, too much friction. There's a fraction, too much friction. There's a fraction, too much friction. Hey, hey, hey. There's a fraction, too much friction. Take a typical man with a typical woman. They sit back and watch everything sign. It's a perfectly natural expression of ill will, but when will hostility subside? There's a fraction, too much friction. There's a fraction, too much friction here. What we need is a positive action. Don't believe in opposing faction. There's a fraction, too much friction here. Ooh, yeah. It's a very old problem that goes back to the dark ages. The wages of original sin. Let's make it a better world. Let's shake it up, boys and girls. It's never too late to be good. There's a fraction, too much friction. There's a fraction, too much friction, yeah. Baby, when we need each other, sure be like sister and brother. There's a fraction, too much friction, yeah. Ooh, yeah. There's a fraction, too much friction. There's a fraction, too much friction, yeah. Baby, when we need each other, should be like sister and brother. There's a fraction, too much friction, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Looking for a man who will love his woman. Looking for a woman who will love her man. Looking for a man who will love his woman. Looking for a woman who will love her man. I'd swallow my pride for you.
enjoyed that. But now it's your chance to get involved, and we want you to help us come sing this song. So if you can all stand, and we'll have a go at singing the song.
you're a visitor here, we'd like to really welcome you and trust that you'll really enjoy the events that we've got planned for you this morning. Right now we're just going to take up our tithes and offering. If you're a visitor here, just let the bag go past. There's no requirement at all for you to put any money in the bag. You're a guest here, and we're really happy to have you. So if you'd just like to pass that bag along as it comes past, that'd be really great. just a few announcements to make. On Tuesday night, there's cell night is happening here for all cells. So whether your cell is on Tuesday night or not, your cell is happening here this Tuesday. The reason for that is that we've got an opportunity to hear Ben Wong share and inspire us. So come along. It's not an excuse for a night off. Come along and support your cell leaders. And also on Thursday night for cell leaders, there's another meeting at 7:30, just for cell leaders, and that's going to be a really good time where Ben's going to give us some tips. So that'll be great. Also coming up on the weekend of June the 6th to the 8th, there's a ladies' camp happening, and if you're a lady and you're interested in attending that, then if you could see Pat, she's got some registration forms, and she'll also give you some more details. We'd really love for you to join with us afterwards. There's a cup of tea that'll be happening out in the foyer here afterwards. So it'd be really great if you could stay behind and meet some people. We'd really love to have a chance to talk to you. Well, relating. It's an interesting topic, isn't it? Why do we all find it something so difficult to do? It's on the one-to-one level it's difficult. It seems to be extremely difficult for countries to relate to each other. Is there some sort of formula for getting it right? Our next item is called Get It Right.
to make a good first impression. Smile and greet them with a firm handshake. I can do that. Smile and a good firm handshake. Firm handshake. Yes, firm handshake. Approach with a confident greeting. Hello. Welcome to the centre. Hello. Welcome. Hello. Welcome to the centre. Yes. Ooh. Ooh, someone's coming. Hello. Welcome to the centre.
Hey, that's some grip you got there. Did a gorilla teach you to shake hands or what?
No, I was just reading the book.
Look,
The book.
I'm not interested in your book. I just lost my job. I've got an interview in 5 minutes, 5. And I haven't got time for your book. Do yourself a favour and lay off the handshake, okay?
Really? The handshake? Oh, no. What am I doing wrong? Greet people with a genuine question. Hi. It's a lovely day today, isn't it?
Okay, what are you selling?
Nothing. Nothing.
Oh, come on, with that fake smile, who are you killing?
I'm not selling anything.
Oh, yeah, right. I know, I've heard it all before. Free home trial, no obligation, buy now, pay later. Yeah, I've heard it before.
No.
I just want to know where the toilet is.
Oh, it's the second door down there on the right.
No, you should get yourself a real job. It's a doorman.
I am the doorman. Hello.
Oh, excuse me, please.
Oh, sure. Welcome to the centre.
Welcome.
Can I help you with those bags then?
It's all right, thank you. I can
No,
manage.
I really want to help you.
Oh, all right. Oh, really?
I'm sorry. It's a lovely day, isn't it?
Can't you fix it? Look.
I'm sorry. I'm really, really, really sorry.
Get your arm off it! Oh, where's my alarm gone? Where's the manager? I'll get you up and arrest me, young man. Where's the manager? Oh!
Oh, shucks. I can never get it right. What's wrong with me?
Excuse me. I've been watching you and I think you're being a little too hard on yourself.
But this guy is making millions out of selling these books to people like me.
That's all. Maybe you don't always have to do things by the book.
But nobody likes me.
Look, I think there's something that you should learn.
Yeah?
Mr.
to say, a mocker resents correction. He will not consult the wise. A happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit. A discerning heart seeks knowledge, but the mouth of a fool feeds on folly. All the days of the oppressed are reached, but the cheerful heart has a continual feast. And they also say, he who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm.
You know, it doesn't matter what happens, some people seem to succeed at anything that they do. And often seems unjust. It often seems almost unfair that some of them succeed. You know that to the core that they're rotten. They may be wrong. They may be users. They may be people who will destroy and want to continue that path. But you know, most people who we consider successful, who we think relate well, inside themselves have a battle going on. There's a barrier that they just can't break through. Abraham Lincoln, the famous President of America, considered himself to be a dismal flop with people in his early years. And while he was proposing to a lady by the name of Mary Owens for her hand in marriage in 1837, he added gloomily to her in the process of his proposition for marriage, "My opinion is that you had better not do it." His self-esteem was so low that he wanted to marry the woman, but he felt that she'd be better off without him. That was the way Abraham Lincoln felt as a young man. And he wrote this, he says, "I have now come to the conclusion never again to think of marrying, and for this reason I can never be satisfied with anyone who would want to be blockhead enough to have me." Did you ever think of doing that when you proposed to your partner, or in the proposition of thinking about perhaps if you're too young to be married, or you're still looking, that you might consider telling the person the dangers in the process? I don't think you will. I think you would be afraid that the person would turn and say, "I agree with you. Hard luck." Benjamin Franklin was an amazing guy. He was a man who became so popular that people from all over the world would want to go to him in France as ambassador. He was an ambassador in France. But the thing that had caused him to be like that was when he was a younger man, a Quaker, one of those unusual Christians who had the courage to face him. And he writes this: he felt that he was a blundering young man, uncouth and unattractive. In Philadelphia one day, he wrote, an old Quaker friend took me aside and lashed me with these words: "Ben, you are impossible. Your opinions have a slap in them for everyone who differs with you. They have become so expensive, nobody cares for them. Your friends find they enjoy themselves better when you are not around." Benjamin Franklin took that seriously, and it impacted his life to the point that we know as ambassador in France, the numbers of people that would want to be just in his presence were amazing. Two men, Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Franklin, both felt a lack of ability to relate well. I don't know about you, but I remember when I was a child. Some of you know my wife, and if you don't, she's only about this tall on me. I've always pondered as to why I married her. Not because I'm thinking anything horrible, but what was it? What was the magic, the essence of the thing that attracted me to Pauline? And I've thought about this often. What was the thing that built our relationship so solidly together? We've had 22 years of marriage. What was the thing that made me want to spend my life relating to her? And I pondered and I thought, was I on a mercy mission? Because when I was younger, I was a shorty. Well, I don't think it was that. But I certainly know what it feels like to be in that position. As a young guy, was so short for my age that I tried to play rugby, but in those days it used to go by weight. So I was always the oldest by a long way. I mean, I was short. I was really short. You know, I was one of those guys in the group in the school that the guys liked to pick on. They used to, because I was little. I'm sure if I'd been big enough to punch them in the nose and to lay them out, they wouldn't have picked on me. It's just easy meat. Well, so they thought, because I was little. I always remember one day some of the guys in the school playground at Spraydon in Christchurch, one of the number of schools we went to. Some of the guys got me by the hair. I better not mess up my moose, but they grabbed my hair. And they twirled me around by my hair and dropped me on the ground, threw me. My hair was reasonably long. And so, so, you know, they thought that was fun. But I was a little guy, and little guys may be little, and the big guys may be able to beat them up, but I remember getting back up on my feet and saying, "You nerds!" Wasn't the only thing I said, but I won't repeat what I said. But inside me, this little guy, there was a heart crying out, saying, "I want to be loved. I want to be loved." I didn't have a particularly happy childhood. Part of it was because we were moving so often, and things had happened. I remember one day they grabbed me by the hair beside the river, and they thought it was fun to chuck me in the river. Nowadays you wouldn't be allowed to have a river running through a school like we had with no fences, but that's the way it was. I got chucked in the river. I remember standing in the middle of that river, little guy, you know, Heathcote River, standing there looking at them guys, and I says, "You guys, you're cruel, you're mean." And I faked I was really hurting real bad, and I threw it aside, and I was almost collapsing, and the guys decided to come down and reach and to pull me out. They were starting to feel bad. It looked like they were getting in big trouble with the teachers, you know. They grabbed me, and I delighted in shoving my feet against a bank, and whoa! There I was, ended up in the river again. But inside me, I used a weapon that was so destructive, and it was only years later I realised. What I did was I decided I was good at electronics, and people don't matter. And so I became a pretty concentrated sort of guy, focused on electronics, and people, they could go somewhere else. And it wasn't the kind thought that I had. That's the kind of thing, you know, where you go somewhere. You identify with this. You go somewhere. When you're a child, you turn up, and then you look around and you think, man, I'm the only one with the old shoes here. Or you turn up and you look at everybody else and they've got the latest jeans, and you haven't got them. And it just compounds the awful feeling inside that you're maybe not acceptable because of that. It's not true. But that's the way I felt. I had a man in a church, one of the churches I was pastoring in his older age, who one day shared a story with me. He said when he was a child, his mother had to raise him. She used to always put him in old shoes and second-hand clothing. And he said I was always out of fashion, always out of date. And the tremendous impact that that had on that man as he grew older. Because he felt that to be living like that was no good. But you only need to be in this area here, especially this church, to know it doesn't matter what kinds of clothes you wear. It's okay. I mean, you look at Derek. Temper says that they look at me. I tried to buy a shirt in Hong Kong. Curry and Temper were with me, and Temper was doing his best to try and convince me that that shirt didn't look so good. Curry was standing saying, "It's all right." It was a beautiful shirt. It had these lovely, lovely patterns on it. Big, beautiful, bright coloured patterns on it. Mind you, I'd never be caught wearing a beret. You see, the way we think is just so conditioned to our heritage and who we are, isn't it? I mean, one of the first things that happened when I became a Christian years and years ago, I remember I had such incredible changes happening in my life, and one of the things I did is I got liberated in clothing. I used to go to a guy who used to make my clothes for me. He used to be in Miller's in Christchurch. He's an Italian guy, and I used to go and I used to look at these bits of cloth. You know, paisley shirts. Great. Trousers with purple fleck in them. Fantastic. I tell this guy, I really like this. I remember the first time I went in, I told him I really like this shirt, but it's the wrong size. Oh, yeah, don't worry, Daddy. He says, here. And he gets the tape measure out and he measures me all up. He says, come back in half an hour. I'll have it ready for you. I went away, came back in half an hour, and here was the shirt, redone, stayed on, fitted perfectly. I felt cool. I felt really good. This is mine. But when I thought about it, you know, if it had been a couple of years earlier, I wouldn't have even had the courage to wear that, to be who I wanted to be. Some of you know that when I met Pauline the first time was at a camp. I was peeling potatoes. Purple and white striped shorts and a pink and orange frilled skivvy with a bright green Jesus badge. And I thought I had short hair until I was looking at photos about 10 years after I was married and discovered that my hair was way down here, and I always thought it was short. But I was me and I was free. And I can say that that was the first time in my life that I could really say that I was free. Like Chris, to give me a glass of water, please. Relationships are made. And when I started changing, I suddenly started making friends. When I felt free to be myself, I suddenly started having more friends than I ever needed or in fact wanted at the time, I found it very hard coping with the numbers of people that I suddenly found were friends. It was just such a radical change for me. It's like two prisoners. Caught. No fault of their own, they were caught in the middle of a war. They were put in a cell, and the cell was a dark and a dingy cell, with a small window in the cell, with the bars. One of the prisoners, or both of them, spent lots of time, because it was the only window in the building, they both spent lots of time looking at that window. And one of the prisoners, he stood there and he used to sit there and stand there and lay there, ponder those bars. Those bars were so ugly, they were metallic, they were a thing that made him feel so trapped he couldn't get out of it. That's what those bars were all about for him. And he resented being entrapped in this prison. And so as a consequence, his resentment grew and his ability to relate to others became worse and worse, if you can misuse English language. He got to the point where he was so embittered and so impassioned by his bitterness that what he did is he got angrier and angrier, and no one could he get along with. No one was he able to relate to. But the other guy, sitting in the same prison cell, he didn't focus on the bars. He focused on what was behind him. He could see, if he sat in the right place, the sky and the stars. And as he looked at the sky and the stars, hope welled up in his heart. And he sat there and he thought, one day, I'm going to be free. One day, I'm going to be liberated. These bars could not hold him. These bars could not hold him bound. They could not possess his life, because he knew that beyond the bars there was hope and not despair. You know, our emotions ebb and flow, and we can look at our relationships and see them just like those two people. We can see them as bars, or we can see the sky behind. How many of you have said this kind of thing? Maybe it's with a marriage partner or a family member or somebody. I really don't love them anymore. I have lost my love for them. You know, that's part of the ebb and flow of relationships. The reality is that what we've done, it's not that we've lost love, is that we've looked at the wrong things. In relationships, it's important not to look at the bars. It's important instead to focus on the hope of the good things for the future. I often have sat with my wife and we've talked about retiring one day. Well, you know, originally it was meant to be 60 years old. The government's trying to push it higher now, but never mind. My wife has this little joke she always comes with when I start talking about retiring. She says this to me, "You'll never retire. You'll never retire." I have these dreams of sitting on a lovely balcony overlooking the sea and just enjoying it. You know what happened? We go on holiday, and after 3 days, I'm hankering to do something else. Our relationship doesn't depend on what we might think we want. but on other things. And so I want to address the issue this morning of the things that cause relational problems. We hear the words in the dance and the songs. We heard about friction and barriers and things like that. Angry words, wrong attitudes, mistrust, bad communication. All those things are part and parcel of relationships that are in difficulty. Doesn't matter whether it's friendships at school or work, relationships with the boss or the wife. And it might be the same person for some. But what is it that creates or causes the problems in relationships? I want to name some things that really haven't been named already, but they were implied. You see, I think the first thing that comes and we identify in relationships is the whole sense of insecurity in a person. It happens in all sorts of ways. Some of the people who appear to be the most secure are the most insecure. Have you noticed some people who come and they always have to bug you, they always have to be in your face, they can't let you have space? That's because they feel insecure. That's what it is. They have these things. They have fear. They usually have bad role models in their background. Some of them, and quite a high percentage of them, felt as if they were academic failures. You know, the worst thing about our education system today and the expectations that we place on people today in the education system, the worst thing about it, you know what it is? It's the fact that if you don't get top, then many people feel as if you haven't achieved. And if you get bottom, you're called a failure. And yet, if only we could look around the world and see how many educational failures there were, who've been some of the most successful people in life. If only we could see that. What about the whole issue of physical looks? I don't know about you, but when I was younger, one of the problems I had was a problem with acne. My mother used to tell me if I didn't eat so much chocolate, it would help. I used to argue that I got the zits before the chocolate came. You know, I sometimes see my daughters stand in front of the mirror. You know? You've done it, that's why you're laughing. It's nervous laughter. We get worried about our physical looks, and that's one of the biggest causes, our worry about things that are not even real and often are very temporary. When I was younger, I was short, as I said. When I got zits, I hated them. They weren't the most enjoyable thing. I got forearm to try and defeat the stuff. I eventually beat it. I now know that I probably would have beaten it if I hadn't done anything. It's just a stage you go through when you're young for some people. Some are worse than others. I had a friend we trained with in Tasmania who was so obsessed before he became a Christian with the zits that he used to be popping them before they got to a whitehead, you know? And his whole face was pitted for life. If only he had not been so concerned with his physical looks. We do get worried. Do I walk right? You know? Ladies, the right way to walk is to copy the catwalk, you know? Slinky, 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 slinky. Guys, if you're going to be a man, you've got to show your chest. Show your chest. And your stomach's not allowed to pop out. You've got to be hunk. Because girls like hunks. You know, watch out, guys, because I notice they also like hunks of meat and they eat them. I mean, this jacket covers it, but my family, I'm not going any further. In my family, we have backs that are in and things that poke out. My wife keeps telling me it's a lemonade that I drink. I know it's not. I was constructed with perfection. I've got perfect balance. I have. I'll walk along a loose chain or a tightrope. I bet you can't do it, but I reckon it's because that keeps that balance against this. But when I was younger, I try and hold it in. Doesn't matter what shape I am, I've come to that place now, but it took a long time. But I used to worry, and I think most of us worried about things. I remember when I was really little, I had a problem with pigeon toes, and I had to wear special shoes. I used to feel real embarrassed about that. In those days, they used to put these stupid shoes on people's feet. They don't do it anymore. It was actually probably going to self-correct in any case, but that's the way it was. And I hated it. I hated it. You see, really the issue of insecurity comes from the fear of rejection. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. We have real attitude problems that have come from that too. You know, I've got to be better than you is an attitude problem. That's what it is. But there are things that we don't always understand. I mean, those two I've already stated, we know about, but there are two issues that we're not really aware of fully. The first one is I want to touch on is the whole issue of heritage. How many of you have said about one of your parents, I'm never going to be like that? Huh? How many of you have said that, honestly? How many of you have succeeded never being like that? Somebody has. Whoa, and one person. I know, I said when I got married, I was never going to do certain things like my dad did. Guess what? I did it. I hated myself for it. Because I did wrong. And I didn't understand why. And the whole issue of the heritage that we have in our lives is real. And it needs to be broken, it needs to be stopped, it needs to be changed. I want to suggest that we look at that seriously in our lives and we say, I'm not going to buy into that anymore. But I want to tell you right now that it's not just an easy thing to change your heritage, is it? I mean, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your parents and your brothers and sisters. You've bought into it against your own choice. But I also want to touch on this whole issue of demonisation. Some people say, oh, they don't believe in it. I didn't either once. But I've too often seen people who have had situations where there's been strange things happening in their lives and they have not understood why they've been like they are. And one of the strange things that happens in their lives is that they do things that they never wanted to do, and it's more than just them not being able to control it, and the natural is something almost they feel driven by some kind of power that's beyond their own ability. I remember a man once that I ended up praying for at a Sweetwater festival, you know, the secular rock festival. We used to take a team of over 1,000 of us Christians, and we used to baptise about 40 of those people a day that went there as pagans, so to speak, and came out knowing that God loved them. We're all pagans that are able to be changed, every one of us. Well, this one guy, I shan't forget this guy, because we were trying to pray for him. Well, there was a group of people trying to. I got called in. And I sat there for some time, and at the end I did something that the early Christians did. I said, in the name of Jesus, I command you to reveal who you are. I became convinced that this was no ordinary complaint this man had, that it was something else. Now this guy had no Christian heritage. He did not know the Bible. He didn't know anything about Christianity except the vague story that Christians were a bunch of hypocrites. It was about his understanding of Christianity. Well, we are. We are. You know? We don't always do what we're going to say we're going to do, but at least we're trying. So, I mean, you know, we all make mistakes. Anybody makes mistakes, hypocrites. So that was his understanding, you see. So we were praying for this guy, and I gave this command. And right at the point I gave the command, he was sitting there, and all these strange sounds came out of his mouth that he couldn't have possibly manufactured himself. Just sound like a whole herd of pigs going, but there's a whole lot at once, not just one. And I sat there and I thought, what is this, God? What is this? And I suddenly remembered a story in the Bible where there was this guy who was wandering amongst some tombstones, and Jesus did the same kind of thing with him. He told these demons to leave him, and these demons were called Legion. They spoke to Jesus, and they didn't want to leave this guy particularly, but Jesus told them they had to go, and they said, well, send us into the pigs. Don't send us anywhere else. Send us into the pigs. So he did, and the consequence of that was that the whole herd of pigs that the people shouldn't have been keeping in the first place because of their culture went racing down the hill and jumped over a cliff face and into the sea. I thought, man, I wonder if this is that spirits, that legion, you know, many spirits. So I prayed against it. I said, in the name of Jesus, legion, be gone. I prayed for a while, and that guy had his life turned around from that moment. People who say that demonisation isn't real are fooling themselves, nobody else. And one of the most dangerous things about it, of course, is if a person says that, one of the immediate suspicions I have is that they've actually got one themselves. It's the ideal deception to claim you don't exist, isn't it? When you do. So they are the kind of causes of it. And are shown out by looking at a person's life, and you know best in yourself who you are when no one else is looking, and that'll portray who you are in terms of relationships. If you are a person who would feel totally disclosed and uncomfortable if you told people everything about yourself, then you're going to have trouble with relationships. So how do we get about finding better relationships, doing better in relationships? There was a guy who loves to paint these lovely cartoons, and he says, I may not be totally perfect, but parts of me are excellent. I like that. Because I think that's true about every one of us in this room. I've got a thinking I'm going to do something with the moment. It's got quite a sharp edge, so I have to be careful. You know, it's been said that our emotions are like a ball of string. And sometimes, in our emotions, we just feel like we're being unravelled somewhat. So what actually happens when we feel like we're being unravelled? sometimes we feel like we're unraveling, but you know, there is a stopping point. We're not going to come totally undone. We were never designed that way. We might feel like there's heaps and heaps and heaps of rejection in our lives. Or we might feel like we're failures because of certain things. We might have all sorts of knots and twists in us, and we might feel like we're a real mess. But you know, that's not the way that we've either been designed or we are. For those of you who have never seen this, anybody who has is not allowed to say anything, right? Please. Can people tell me what they think this thing here is? Can you see it clearly? A salt shaker. Is that what you think it is? Well, I want to tell you that sometimes we think we are a bit tardy like salt. But not always are we what we appear to be. You see, if you take this little thing here, you'll see I can lift it up. And then if we take it and we drop it down, watch very closely. What do you see? Good eyesight. Really good eyesight. How about really, really good eyesight? Here we go. Here we are. This is a little fancy pin pusher I designed quite a few years ago. The plastics manufacturer has since nicked my design, but never mind. Cheap. This is brass. This is genuine. You see, and every one of us is designed differently to what we may perceive it sometimes. And I can stand here for a long time pushing pins. You know? And I want to suggest this morning that there are some things that we are designed to be and do. There are some things that we are designed to be and do that we may not have fully realised. Some will seem obvious and some won't. And I want to list them all. Here they go, and I'm going to move fast. The first thing is that if we are going to be people that are going to create healthier relationships, we need to accept and love ourselves. Can I say that really clearly? Love is not something that happens, you know? You always see it on the cartoons with the cartoon character when he falls in love with a girl and the girl falls in love with him. You see his hearts going boom, 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 boom. Well, it wasn't like that when I met my wife. It just wasn't like that. It definitely wasn't for her. She looked at me and she said to herself, she only confessed this some years after we were married, she said to herself, "Who's this guy? He's strange." And there was another uncomplimentary compliment she made that I can't recall the exact wording for, but it wasn't good. But she married me all the same. Her heart didn't burst out of her chest at first sight. And we need to learn to love ourselves as we are. Jesus spoke about this. And when he was asked, what is the greatest commandment, he was told two things. The second one was this: you shall love your neighbour as yourself. Alright? You shall love your neighbour as yourself. And if you think about the implication of that, you will realise that you cannot, in the terms of what Jesus said, love a person with great passion. And I'm not just talking about marriage. or sex. I'm talking about love that's real and genuine. You can't love them in reality if you can't love yourself. That's why Jesus said what he said. The second thing is this. It says you need to accept others. See, once you've learned to love yourself, you've got to learn to love others in the right way. And when I say got to, I don't mean it as a heavy-handed thing, but we'll come to the place later of discovery how that can happen. If you're going to have good, healthy relationships, that's the only way it's going to happen. Here are some tips about accepting others. Be careful about criticism. I'm sure if Pauline, the first time she'd met me, told me that my hair was too long, my clothing was disgusting, and my legs were bandy, and like the guys used to say at work, "You're lucky, Colville," and I say, "Why is that?" And they say, "You're lucky your legs don't snap off and poke you up the backside." If she had said that to me, I wouldn't have been totally endowed towards her, would I? D.L. Moody, he's a famous American Christian in a previous period of time. He said this about being cautious about criticism towards others. He said this. He wasn't willing to get involved in criticism towards others. He said, "Right now, I'm having so much trouble with D.L. Moody," that's himself, "that I don't have time to find fault with the other fellow." I like it. I'm having so much trouble with myself, I don't have time to find fault with the other person. I think if we could keep an attitude like that, that would be marvellous, wouldn't it? Don't you think? You're allowed to say amen around here if you agree.
Amen.
The next one in terms of accepting others is being honest with the person that you want to maintain a friendship with is important. The honesty is not telling them that they've got a queer face and stupid ideas. That is not honesty. All that is bleeding over somebody else. I remember there was a young group of young people when I came here. Most of them were not Christians, and they had this kind of conflict between the group, and it took me months to get the thing sorted out. They had this meeting together, a little group of them. The people in the church didn't realise that they were doing this. I think if some of them had realised, they might have stopped them. And what they did is they decided to have this honesty session with each other. They agreed to it. They sat down in two groups with each other, told each other what they honestly felt about each other, and went away so badly hurt that it took years for some of them to get repaired. It was only when some of them became Christians that they finally did get it repaired. And it's one or two who I don't think ever got it repaired. Honesty is not trying to squeeze someone else's life zits and pimples. Honesty is not telling them what you think is right. Rebuking a person for something they don't even understand sometimes, or if they do understand, they made it obvious already that they didn't want to know. You only have the right to be honest like that when the other person gives you that right and that freedom. The third thing is be liberal with praise. Encourage your friend's uniqueness. How many of you remember a boat by the name of Tinkerbell? How many people? Some do. A fairy called Tinkerbell. Well, this little boat was called Tinkerbell because it was 13.5 foot long. And there was a guy by the name of Robert Manry, who on the 24th of May 1965, with the encouragement of his wife and friends, and he'd never, hear this, he'd never ever sailed seriously in the open sea. Right? He left Falmouth in Massachusetts, and his wife Virginia waved him goodbye as he decided to sail to Falmouth in England. And a 13.5 foot boat, it took him 78 days, and he tied himself to the boat, fortunately, because he got swept overboard. He spent half his time through the traffic lanes of the sea trying to avoid tankers that were trying to run him down. He struggled with the sextant because he'd been to this course to learn how to use it, but when you're standing on a boat going like this, it's very hard to concentrate and get your sighting right, you know. But he made it. And when he got there, he just thought he was an ordinary guy who'd been a clerk, who was just going to go there and he'd go back home again, sell his boat and travel home again. His wife was going to be there and she was waiting there with over 300 vessels and 40,000 people to welcome him. He was a guy who didn't let anybody hold him back. He took the encouragements that were there, and his wife and his close friends said to him, go for it, man. If this is your vision, take it. That was a big risk, 13.5-foot boat. Oh, I wouldn't have got very far. I would have been laying ground bait for the fish. The fourth thing is that you need to lay, or allow room. I still get my thoughts mixed up here. You need to allow room for privacy. If you want to have good friendships, you cannot do this. You cannot be in the guy's face continually, because in the end he's going to feel uncomfortable. He's not going to appreciate it. And in the end, when he sees you coming, he's going to find the best escape route he can. He'll find somebody else to go to. He'll find somewhere else to escape to. And he'll say, I don't want to be near this guy. Rescue me, somebody. So he'll go to somebody he doesn't even know. He'll go up and say, hey, you've got to talk to me. You've got to allow space. You've got to allow some room. If you go to talk with somebody and their eyes are flicking elsewhere, get the hint. The fifth thing is that you need to give your friends, if you're going to have true friends, the ability to fail. Hey, this church, if you ask the people here, they can tell you, I've done it plenty of times. And they've forgiven me. But so have they. You see? I've gone up here and I've preached a sermon, and sometimes I've come down out of that preaching that sermon, I've come back and oh Lord, oh, that was a nightmare. That's happened to me. You know the stupid thing is, people can be so forgiving when they're being forgiven that they'll get great value out of something you thought was a disaster. That's neat, eh? You need to give that freedom to fail. If a person fails, don't get them like you would a tent peg and get the hammer and drive them into the ground. Yeah, man, you were a failure. You're never going to pick yourself up. You stink. That makes them feel real pleasure, you know? Thanks for hammering me down. I really enjoyed that. Can you imagine it? We've got to give room for people to fail. You know, the neat thing about Jesus was that he modelled that for people. He showed people that not everything happened just the way that the others expected it to happen, even at the point of his death. They wanted him to blast the guys. They wanted him to frizzle them. They knew that Jesus could do this. He refused. He let the guys that were killing him fail, even where they thought they were succeeding. And one of the things, the best things you can do for your friend is to encourage them to have other healthy relationships with other people. It was Shakespeare who said that jealousy is a green-eyed monster. That's a nice description, isn't it? You know? I've put green eyes on all of you right now, you know. Big one green eye, you know. Jealousy. That's what stops us giving our friends the liberty to have other friends. And we need to have that liberty. We need to feel free about that. And the seventh one is be ready for changes in your relationship. Don't expect it to be the same every week, every year in, every year out. You know, my wife, if she was like that, would be the most boring person on this earth. You know, sometimes she just does things that she's never done before and she surprises me and it's really nice. I love to sneak up on Pauline and give her a fright. It's sort of a thing in me. She hates it, but I still do it. She forgives me. But now and again, she will do things herself. Things that normally, you know, I'm not always the most tolerant person. I've come to realise the older I get, the less tolerant I am about some things. I'm not always the most tolerant. Got a nervous laughter out here. Some people discovered it, I think. No? No, my daughters get pretty good freedom most times. But you know, sometimes if I'm watching a TV program or I'm reading a book or doing something I'm doing for me, you know, I don't usually do stuff for me. Sometimes if I am, somebody comes and intrudes, I can't stand that. It's something I find really hard to deal with. I just like my privacy sometimes. You know, some people think that pastors and people made a mistake of thinking I'm the most wonderful person that being willing to relate right now. I'm not. I sometimes have to go through this internal struggle. And I have to face changes that I'm not expecting, and I have to accept those things. When we first got married, my wife was kind of shy. And but before I met her, I thought she was the most vibrant person in the group. But when I actually got married to her, I discovered she wasn't what I thought I'd marry. Have you found that? Yeah. And I had to accept the changes. But then, blow me down, we get married, and we're trucking along after we got things sorted out in a bit of a disaster for 2 years. We're trucking along all right, you know. And I end up as a pastor. And my wife springs a total surprise on me. Yeah, she did. She tells me one day, you know, when I was a young girl, I always dreamed that I was going to be a pastor's wife. Pauline saying that. And you knew my wife as well as I do. You'd know that was kind of a joke. I thought, man, I don't know how I can adapt to this. And Pauline and I sometimes would be sitting in the lounge watching television or reading a book. Pauline has found all sorts of sneaky ways of doing things that sometimes I've wanted to get annoyed at. She's come up and she's sort of quietly come up beside me. I've sometimes been conscious of her presence and she's suddenly jumped on me and on my neck just with a sheer hang of it. She wasn't like that when we got married. She'd been like that, I might have thought twice. She's trying to find a friendly way of getting my attention, so I'll enjoy it. Oh boy. We need to be willing when our partners, and they do go through it, or our friends, as we get older, they change. You know, I've watched some of the young people around here. Some of them have gotten girlfriends and boyfriends. You know an interesting thing about it is that their friends, their closest friends, find it very hard when that change happens. I've watched it for years while I've been pastoring. They just don't, their closest friends, they even sometimes break their friendships because they don't understand that the new friend is very important in their life. We need to be willing to accept those changes. And my second and last one is, if you're going to maintain a good, healthy relationship, you need to communicate warmth. Every time you see a person, every time you see a person's Monday morning at work, you know, and I say, good morning, and you go, oh my God, blooming head's so good about this morning, you know? I can guarantee you that they're not going to be your friend. They didn't need that Monday morning, and they soon discover that saying good morning to you is the last thing they should do if they want a nice day. And one of the things that it costs us to communicate warmth, it does cost us. It costs us. We've got to recognise that. It's not always easy when you're suffering pain sometimes to communicate warmth, but you know, in communicating warmth, it gives you the opportunity to be able to share a relationship at a deeper level. Somebody comes and says, good morning, and you feel like death on Monday morning, you can say, good morning, it's good to see you this morning, and mean it. But at the same time, be carrying your own load of pain. You can do that. But then it gives you the right, they might say, how did the weekend go? And say, man, I had a really rough weekend. It's been tough going. I just so appreciated you saying good morning in such a cheery voice this morning. That was really helpful. Communicating that kind of warmth, they're going to feel real good about that. They're going to say, can I help you? Can I do something to help you today? Can I do something else? I really enjoyed you telling me how good it is inside. And it's not false, in spite of what some people say, to be warm towards a person while you're suffering pain. There's nothing false about it at all. That's real living, I think. To be living in the sadness of your own drudgery because you're choosing not to live in any other way, that's false. That's not reality. All it is a terrible state of life. We need to live right above mediocrity. I want to finish this morning by talking about the thing I believe is primary to being able to cover all these other points I touched on this morning. Like I shared earlier, when I was a child, my relational skills were appalling. They weren't great. However, something happened. Something that changed me, and I now love to relate with others. I'm not afraid of myself. I honestly couldn't be too concerned about what I looked like, except if it was concerning other people. I remember when I got shingles, almost 8 years ago. And my face looked such a gross mess. It had that big purple scar across it. And I suddenly realised that some people here weren't coping with looking at me. They weren't coping with looking at me. And I just sort of wondered whether I might be better not to be a pastor. If some people couldn't cope, then it might be wiser to step down. It was quite a big turmoil I went through. Praise God. I visited a friend whose wife was a doctor. She was horrified to discover the hospital and medical profession were not supplying me with a remedy for that scar, which she said if it had been left much longer, I would have had permanently. She just gave me this special cream. Solved the problem. You see, for myself, I still felt good in myself. I still felt excellent in myself. It wasn't easy facing people when they couldn't face me. But there was one thing that changed my life. And it's summed up in a statement I found by, once again, by my friend the cartoonist. He had this picture that went with it, with a guy sitting on a jester's back. And he had these words written. He said, I'd probably function much better if somebody more qualified than me were in charge of my life. I'd probably be function much better if somebody more qualified than I am were in charge of me. And the thing that I found that has changed my life and has helped me to relate to people better than anything else was the fact that I've discovered a God who could relate to me and wanted to relate to me. And when I understood that, you know, the first first portion of my being Christian, I could not call God Father easily because of my own difficulties. But I come to discover what the ideal Father is like. And I can, with freedom, call him Father. I came to realize that he was somebody who accepted me as I was, and so I was able to accept others as they were, and it changed my whole life. Everything that I needed for living was found in God. And I want to say this morning that the passages that were read relates to that. It says, a happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit. And it goes on further down, eventually to talk about the man who finds God as the happiest person alive. And I think that's true. I think it's true. I have a contentment about me that I never ever had before. I now have a reality in my life that I never had before. But I tell you what, there's no half-pie measure. I had to take it all or nothing. God doesn't puddle around. He wants to either be a friend or not a friend at all. But it is our choice ultimately. When I have him right, I can love myself more because I love God. Because you see, the first commandment that Jesus spoke about was that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength. And the second is this, that you will love your neighbour as yourself. They're the two greatest ones. And if you think about it, who benefits most out of that? It's you. You and I. I guess there's nothing more to say in terms of that, just to realise that really knowing him like that has changed my life and has changed others here. And we'd love for the same thing for each one of you. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to lead us in a prayer. And I'd like you to join me if you'd like to. And at the end of it, I'm going to say, and all the people said, and if you agree with this prayer, I'd like you to say amen. And then afterwards, I'd like you to tell one of your friends or one of us what happened for you this morning and thinking about that and praying with us. Let's pray together. You can either keep your eyes open or close them. I'm going to close mine because that gives you a greater comfort zone, but I also think it helps us focus on God a little more because we're not distracted by things around us. So that's what I'm going to do. Join me. Lord Jesus, I want to thank you that you were prepared to lay down your life for us, that we might be in a good, healthy friendship with you, a good, healthy relationship with you. So I pray that you will guide me, that you will guide each one of us to know what it is to have a healthy relationship with you and also to have really good, healthy relationships with others. Lord, we know that it's your desire to really give us satisfaction in life. And we'd like to do that, but sometimes we've done wrong things. We've broken our relationship with you. We haven't even picked it up, some of us. And so we ask right now, today, can we come back to you, Lord? We want to do that. And so we say we accept what you did for us. You died for us that our relationship might be restored. And it doesn't make sense in a way, but it was the only way out. And we don't understand fully why you loved us that much you did it, but we want to say sorry for the times when we have spurned that relationship, when we've rejected you. And we'd like to know what it is to know you. In Jesus' mighty name. And all the people said, Amen.